son 3 years ago.
Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
So I rejoined Reading Simplified, and I've switched my kids over to Reading Simplified and doing some EBLI strategies, and it's really exciting. And they're already making a lot of progress, and I feel so relieved because I thought OG was really hard to teach and hard for my kids to learn. They're all really struggling readers, and we were making slow progress, and I was like working like crazy and tearing my hair out. And now I feel so excited to be reading real text with them, like most of the time.
Yeah,
it just feels great.
I feel the same way. It's like I had to open up my mind to it, but once you do, it's so exciting. So exciting.
Yeah. So I was excited to hear Dr. Herron, and I thought your article was beautifully written, and all of them were. And so I'm just here to learn more.
Excellent. Thanks, Sarah.
Good.
All right, we're going to get started. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. This is going to be the first in a series of the Dystinct magazine that came out in January, all about structured linguistic literacy. And so every month we're going to highlight one of the contributors to the magazine. And today, Jeannie, Dr. Herron, was so super nice to start us off on this journey. And if we had an hour for me to introduce her, that would not be enough time, because her past is incredible. Her experiences, both as a researcher and in her personal life. So if you ever have a chance, Reading League had a beautiful interview with her, and she tells her story about traveling in a boat with her kids and her husband, and it's so romantic. But let's get back to business. Dr. Jeannine Herron is a research neuropsychologist. After 10 years of dyslexia research at University of California at San Francisco, she became founder and CEO of Talking Fingers. She was the principal investigator on 5 small business innovation research grants from the National Institute of Child Health to develop and to do research with early literacy software in collaboration with Joe Torgeson, Carol Connor, Linnea Airy, Patricia Mathies, I think, Margie Gillis. Mathis, that's correct. And others whose mentorship enriched her research and her life. She's the author of several books, including Making Speech Visible, How Constructing Words Can Help Children Organize Their Brains for Skillful Reading. And Dr. Herron, Jeannie, thank you for being here and launching us tonight. I'm really excited to see you.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm very glad to be here and look at that, see all these people. I'm amazed at Donna's whole Facebook enterprise. I think it's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And I hope you've all been getting good information and enjoying using some of the tips you've been getting. I have been doing speech to print kinds of things all my life, and I've been doing reading research for 45 years. And my adventure started out in Mississippi in 1964, when my husband, who was a photojournalist, and I came to Mississippi to work in the civil rights movement. And while I was there, I met with a couple of other people. My kids were 5, and 4, 5 and a half. And there weren't any schools or anything available for them in Mississippi at that time. So this other woman and I decided to write a grant. We collaborated with a psychiatrist. We wrote a grant to the National Institute of Health, which was then under the auspices of Sergeant Shriver, and he was starting something called Head Start. So eventually we started the first Head Start in the country in Mississippi, and we had several thousand kids around the state in different small communities doing Head Start activities. And that was really what got me hooked on early childhood and early reading. I have some slides that I could show, and I could share my screen if that will
Yep.
work.
Yep, you're
And
ready to
we
go.
can. Okay, I'm gonna start it. And I'll get rid of that. And I'll get rid of that. That's my screen now. I don't know how to do this. Wait a minute.
All right, at the
There
bottom.
we go.
Yep, it should say share screen. Do you have it up, your PowerPoint up?
I have it up. Do you see my screen now?
No, we don't.
You do not. I clicked on share screen at the beginning. Let's see.
Let's see here.
Share screen, share screen. And that's not my screen.
You want me to make you host and then you'll maybe that'll make you feel better and have all the because you're co right now.
Okay. Well, this is what happens when I click on share screen, and that's not what's up on my screen at all.
Okay, so if you reduce the video,
Choose what?
reduce the video, like the zoom, reduce it down, and then where's your video? That's what has to be on your back screen, and then when you share screen, it'll pop up. Does anyone have any other tips for her?
I don't know what you mean by video.
At the bottom.
On the Zoom.
Yeah.
You mean, Donna,
the
you mean
Zoom
to tell her
screen?
to minimize? You mean to minimize the screen with us?
Yeah. Can you minimize the Zoom screen? And then if your other screen is up, that's the one you want to click on, or can you see the menu at the bottom where it says share screen?
Yes, I do.
All right, press that.
I said, I did, but I haven't minimized this screen. No, that's not it. I've never shared my screen before, so I'm sorry I'm not familiar with this.
Okay.
No, that's not
let
my
me think
screen.
here.
If
if you could send it to me, I could put it up.
I don't know if she's not the host, I don't know if she can share a screen.
She's co-host though.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry. Thanks. Sorry.
It's okay. Hi, Eliza. Hi, buddy.
Jeannie, it might have to do with what screen you're sharing. When you do share screen, then you have to click on which screen it is you're sharing.
Right.
And so that might be the problem.
Okay. I think what I'll do is I'll just talk to you and send my slideshow to Donna. How's that?
Send it to me and then I can put it up while you're talking.
Okay. Okay.
You could tell us about your stories going to Africa or something really cool like that.
I can talk about a lot of things. Just give me a minute. Okay. I just want to get this off to you.
Which address are you going to use?
I think it says Gmail.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now. Okay, wait a second. Okay, I just sent it to you.
Okay.
Okay, well, let me just talk for a minute. Maybe some of you are not familiar with the whole idea of speech to print. And this is it. The fact that the alphabet was invented to make speech visible tells us that the whole idea of reading and writing have to be connected to speech. The alphabet stands for speech sounds. So it's a natural thing to try to connect those neural pathways in the brain to what's already there. And what's already there is how to pronounce words, how to understand words, how to communicate with words, the vocabulary, the meaning of words, all that is already organized in the left hemisphere. So what has to happen with reading is that it has to be very intimately connected with those pathways that are already there. And that's speech. So naturally, you go from speech to print. Once Louisa Most said, we go backwards. We're going from print to speech instead of from speech to print. When you segment a word like cat, you have to think of that word as 3 different sounds. Okay, there is my first Head Start class in Mississippi. Can you make it big? Can you take
yeah.
fill
Hang on, I gotta
fill
figure
the
out
screen?
how to do that.
Okay.
Hmm.
Anyway, do show slideshow,
There we go.
and that's better. Can everybody see that now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now you're going to have to change the slides.
Right.
So go ahead to the next one. Okay, this is the article in Dystinct magazine. We called it Tips for the Best Start on the Road to Literacy. And I started out by saying that you can't just use your eyes and your ears in order to read. And that's what we've been trying to do with the 3Q system and trying to memorize the visual appearance of words. You're just using your eyes and your ears. You're not blending that new thing with speech. So what has to happen is that we have to start our engine with speech, and we have to add those gears that are there, decode and encode. We have to learn how to use the alphabet code and make words with the code, and also decipher words that somebody else has written with the code. So go to the next slide. And this has to happen automatically. It has to happen in such a way that it's so, oh gosh. I'm so sorry. That's my phone. And it's in the other room. Oh gosh. Okay, it's gone. So encoding and decoding has to happen automatically. And to do that, to make that happen, it's like riding a bicycle. You practice a little bit and pretty soon you've got it, and then you've got it forever. It's automatic. You don't have to think about it. It just happens automatically. That's motor memory. And it's the same with encoding and decoding. You're training your mouth to think of words as individual sounds as well as whole sounds. Your brain has always thought of a word since you started speaking as a whole sound. And now you have to break that word up into small speech bits. And it's those speech bits that are linked to letters. So that's the direction that we have to go. We have to start with speech and get to letters. And next slide. So if letters represent the sounds that we say, let's show children how to turn the words they say into words that they can see. And that's why the code was invented in the first place. And if you have any questions as we go along, just to put them in the chat, and Donna will.
I
What are
just,
you
I
putting
just
up?
love that paragraph. If letters represent the sounds we say, let's show children how to use letters to turn words they say into words they see. That is perfect. I love
Yeah, and it's so much easier than trying to hear the sounds. To think about a word as something that you're saying and think about the sounds as something that you're saying is much easier than trying to think about sounds that you hear, because when you say a whole word, the sounds are all melded together. They're all blended. They're hard to distinctly pull apart. But your mouth is pulling them apart. Your mouth is producing different sounds as you say a word. So what I encourage teachers to do is to say, what sound did you say at the beginning of that word? Not what sound did you hear? Let's stop talking so much about what do you hear and talk more about what you say. Okay, let's change the slide. Okay, here's what Louisa Moat said. She said, one of the flaws that we're including in our instruction is that we're teaching the code backwards. And if you go from print to sound, where you're linking, you're memorizing grapheme phoneme pairs, and then you're just linking a sound with a letter and trying to blend the word together. You're not really accessing you're not really learning how to segment a word. So you're not accessing phoneme awareness at a deep level. The next slide. So phoneme awareness is not primarily about listening. Go to the next one. It'll bring some text up. Yeah. Okay, that's what I just said. We need to teach children how to say words and think about the words, the sounds they're saying with their mouth as they say the word. So if they're starting with a word like mat, you can stretch the sounds out like mat, and do it in such a way that the child you're working with can see your face and see your mouth making those different sounds, because that's how kids learned how to talk in the first place. They were looking at somebody's face over the crib, making sounds with their mouth, and looking at that mouth, they're mimicking. Okay, so next slide.
All right, Jeannine, I want to stop you. There's a question.
Okay.
What does the child gain when asking what sound did you say versus what sound did you hear?
Because they're learning to link that letter with something they have done with their mouth, a very clear, distinct motor act. It's when you listen to a word, mat, those sounds are all blended together. It's very hard to distinctly pull out the and the and the when you're just using your ears. But it's so much easier when you're using your mouth. Your brain is saying, "Oh, I'm making that sound. I'm making that sound. I'm making that sound." So it's a much clearer signal. A motor signal is a much clearer signal, and the kinesthetic feel of the mouth making that sound is much clearer than some acoustic vibration in the air. Okay.
Makes sense.
Does that answer your question? Okay.
I think so. Let's see. And is this done with using letters?
Yes. You want to link that sound with a letter right away, and we'll get to that in just a minute. You'll see it.
Next. Uh-oh.
Now, some people say that kids who really struggle with reading need to use blank tiles first. I've been working a lot with pre-K kids in regular classrooms, and I've found that they can do it quite easily. But if a child is struggling and you feel that they need to use blank tiles instead of letter tiles, That's fine. But what we're going to talk about is arranging letter tiles into the words so they don't have to write them right away. They can just move the tiles around. Maria Montessori did that years ago in Italy with the street kids she worked with. She just had letters, movable alphabet it was called, and that's what they use in a Montessori classroom. You move the alphabet around and make and construct the words that you're saying by linking those letters to the sounds you're saying with your mouth. Okay, so if you haven't used the word encoding, what we mean by encoding is simply sounding out a word and using letters to construct that word, to make it visible, okay? So encoding, instead of learning how to decode first, what we're proposing is that you learn how to encode first, especially in the very first introduction to the alphabet. And we're going to use a small number of letters and start right away. You don't have to memorize the 26 letters of the alphabet and like 52 uppercase and lowercase shapes and the names and the sounds and so on. You can start with just a few letters and start making meaningful words right away. And that's much more fun. And it's much more interesting to the brain because the brain wants to connect new information to something that it already knows. And it already knows the meaning, the pronunciation and the meaning of a word. So adding this new thing to what it already knows is more, it's more useful to the brain because then the brain knows how to store that new information. If you're just memorizing names of letters or sounds of letters or shapes of letters, the brain, it doesn't have a useful place to put those. And what we want to do is we want to establish efficient pathways for this reading so there isn't any stumbling afterwards. Okay, next one. Okay, so here are the essential elements. You focus on phoneme awareness, not syllables or any. You're trying to focus on the awareness of each phoneme in the word, each speech sound in the word. And as I said, you have to segment in order to spell them. And then link that segmentation to letters that represent the phonemes as they're sounding out words. And then integrate phoneme awareness, letter and grapheme knowledge, and handwriting. So this can all happen at 4 years old. That's what we're doing in preschools in Mississippi right now. And that's what I did with the grants from the National Institute of Child Health. We did research in Connecticut with Margie Gillis with pre-K kids. And the kids who learned how to use the alphabet in this way were more prepared than any other child in the district when they went into kindergarten with the data. Okay. Go ahead. Okay, so if we try to get them to cover the entire alphabet all at once, what we're doing is we're kind of overloading the whole system. And they're not as those letters are not as meaningful unless children can understand that they're actually making real words with them. So, okay, go ahead. Oh, I don't know if you can see this, huh? Can they see that?
Well, yeah, I can see it. Can you all see it?
Okay. Okay. So the idea is what I started out telling you, that if we're going to write a word like mat, you want to, first you want to have the child say it with you. Say mat. And mat is something that we're sitting on. We're sitting on a mat. So you define the word, and then you want to find the letters that make the word mat. It's like mountain or mama. And look, it looks like two mountains. So let's pick that letter that looks like two mountains and put it together with S and T. I'll show you a video if I can of the, I guess I can't. Oh, shucks. I have a little 4-year-old boy who is putting together words, and in 11 lessons, this boy used alphabet tiles to make words. He learned, I think, 7 letters. FANTASIC, yeah, about 7 letters. And at the end of the 11 lessons, he is sounding out the word fantastic, and he's picking the tiles to draw, to construct that word, and then he's writing that word. He's writing all those letters together. And in the video, you can see his little mouth going, oh, F. Okay. He's thinking about it. Oh, that's okay. And he writes an A. And then fan. Oh, fan. Oh, that's and he says it goes up, down, up. I'm gonna make an N. So he goes through the whole word and writes out the word fantastic. He's absolutely darling. But that's what can happen if you are working with a child and trying to help them sound out a word. Did you have a question? No. Okay.
Wait, there's some in the chat. Let's see. All right, here we go. Do you want to stop for questions? It kind of makes sense. All right.
Yeah, it does. I like it. Yeah.
Okay, do you think that we are overdoing it when we tell teachers to show students pictures of what our mouths are doing when we make different sounds, which is in isolation are technically not phonemes?
I think it depends on the child. Some children really have a hard time with phoneme awareness. And actually that is the symptom at 3rd grade. When we do the testing with 3rd graders who are struggling, it's phoneme awareness that's missing. They are not able to segment a word and link those speech sounds to letters. So, I think it depends on the child. I know that Pat Lindemood made pictures of the sounds and so on. I think the most dramatic, the most helpful thing is to watch the mouth and to do lip reading. And there's been some research about that, if you're pronouncing the word with the child, say, watch my lips. And that's more salient signal than looking at a picture of a mouth that they might not even, relate that to their own mouth.
I agree. Here's another question. So moving letter cards is better than writing the letters? ?
No, it's just the first step. If the child hasn't even picked up a pencil yet, or use a marker, the thing to do is to start by moving letters. And once they get the idea of the fact that these letters can be in different places in different words, they're representing the same sound in this word, but they're in different place. It's easy to move the tiles around. And the next easiest thing is using a marker on a whiteboard. If you're trying to use a pencil, there's a lot of erasing and it's just more cumbersome. So I think the easiest thing, especially for very young kids, is to first start with moving the alphabet around and then using whiteboard and marker.
That's a great way to scaffold it. Okay.
I'm going to sneeze.
Let's see.
Okay. Any more questions?
Here's one. Is there any importance of what types of letters to use? For example, are letters printed on paper less beneficial compared to magnetic letters that are tactile? What about
No, I don't think
yeah.
we don't need to worry about things like that. You can draw letters on a piece of paper and cut them out if you want to. I created these letters with pictures that bring to mind both the sound and the shape. So the S is shaped like a snake. The cat curls around like a cat and is embedded in a cat and so on. And that's another scaffolding. But essentially, you just need some letters on paper or whatever, a box or whatever you have. Yeah.
Yeah, and the next part of the question is, what if there are magnetic letters with different colors or different colors? Is that a cognitive overload for students?
It could be. I think the simplest thing is to make the consonants all one color and then the vowels of another color if you
Yeah.
want, to have another color. But yeah.
I think sometimes kids rely on the colors, and so they that might be their cue or clue
Yeah.
to the letters. So if you make
Yeah.
them all one color, it reduces the chance of being wrong or right, being wrong.
Right.
Okay, students watch the teachers.
So on this page on the screen, what we're doing is we're starting with something like Matt, and leave the at on the whiteboard or on the table with the tiles, and take away the M, and then say, do you want to try to make that word into cat? And if the child says, yeah, I'd like to do that, and then say, okay, let's say the word cat. Cat. Pronounce it really well with them, and then have them say it. And what sound did you say at the beginning? And go through it with them until they kind of get, sake. Okay, and repeat it so that you're always helping them. They're not struggling with anything. And so then you find the letter C. This is the letter C, and it says k, stands for the sound k. We're going to put it here. Now let's read. Let's see if it says cat, and then point to each of the letters and say the sounds. And point to C and say k. Point to a and say a. Point to t and say t. Okay, let's do it again. Let's do it a little faster. Cat. Let's do it a little faster. Cat. Okay, and so now you've gotten them to both encode and decode a word, and they're getting the idea of what this alphabet is for. And you can take the C away and say, let's do another word like sat or hat. And sat and hat are good words to start with because you can draw out the sounds.
Mhm.
You say s. Okay, what's the beginning? What did you say at the beginning of that word? You said s. And just repeat it like that. And the word hat is good too because that's a funny sound. And you can just draw out the
Well, plus
sound.
those are words that they can draw pictures to go with them, so they can make the association. That's really important.
Right. Okay.
Next.
So by changing that beginning sound, they're still dealing with a meaningful word while they're learning the sound. They're learning to segment the word. They're learning phoneme awareness. They're learning to link a letter with that sound. They're learning that's phonics, and they're putting it together with a meaningful word, which is encoding. And when they do it back again, when they do cat and blend it, they're doing decoding. So you're putting everything together in a very meaningful way. Okay.
Next.
And please ask more questions if you want to. Next slide.
Make letter tiles with the 40 sounds in English. You want me to keep going?
Oh, yeah. I think,
I
I thought
think
that.
you talked about that.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
You talked about that too.
Okay. Yes, what those three things are interesting. We talked about an effective and efficient way to introduce encoding. We talked to start at 3 or 4 years old if you want to. You could be doing it in the car, you can segment words in the car. Let's see what stop, what the word stop, what the sounds are in the word stop. Let's say it together. Ah, okay. So it can also be used this way as an intervention for reading difficulties, because sometimes those kids that are struggling with reading have never been told that the alphabet is a code and that stands for speech sound.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next slide. Okay. Those are some studies that have been done. I think the next slide tells about the study that I did with Margie Gillis. Yeah, this is from our NICHD report. And this is really important. We're doing the same thing with 12 pre-K classes in Mississippi right now. The pre-K kids who use encoding as a route to decoding entered kindergarten with significantly better prerequisite letter sound knowledge, phoneme awareness, and blending skills on DIBELS. That's the standardized test that they're all using. Better than controls and all the others in the district. So there's been systematic and science-based research done with it, and what I'm working with another group of researchers to see if this couldn't be done by parents and caretakers and teachers all across the country. What we'd like to do is start a literacy revolution and pass this information around. As Donna says, the media is a very easy way to communicate. We could put all these lessons into mini lessons that you could access on YouTube or whatever, and you could just do it at home, and you could do it with the siblings at the same time. I think that if we could get a movement going that shows that these early skills of encoding and decoding are not rocket science. They're really pretty easy to do. You just do what I just showed you with the letters. You can move from a rhyme like at to a rhyme like ig, and do pig and wig and jig. And you can go to other rhymes like all. All is an incredible rhyme because you can put about 10 different consonants in front of it and make words. So it's something that the adult can play with as well as the child. And pretty soon what we're doing in the kindergarten, the pre-K, is we're putting words together into phrases. I am big. I am fantastic. And so on. So they're using these words in phrases and sentences now, writing them on their whiteboards. Mm-hmm. And I think if you tried this with a child, you would see that it happens pretty quickly. It's and I know that there are in the Dystinct magazine, there were descriptions of ways that you can show them different ways to make the same sounds. I'm starting with just one way to make the sound, and then with these 4-year-olds, because they're pretty little, and then adding another way, like with the vowel, each vowel makes 2 sounds at least. So you can do the short and the long vowel, but if you get too complicated right at the beginning, I'm afraid it is cognitive overload. They're just seeing so many different ways to make the same sound that it becomes difficult for them. But I have an open mind, and I'm listening to Nora, I'm listening to Marnie, and I want to be able to offer a systematic developmental curriculum that will help with the very beginning of somebody understanding the alphabet, whether that person is 4 or 40. That this would be a systematic way to build up a repertoire of being able to segment words and linking different letters to those words, to those sounds to make words. Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right.
Let's see if we have some. I was going to show that great video, but that's okay.
I have some questions. How much time during the day should a pre-K teacher spend doing this? Would it be whole class, small group, or combination?
Okay, we're doing a combination in Mississippi. We're spending about 20-30 minutes, and with whole group. There are some apps that can be used and shown on a big whiteboard in the front of the whole group. That's one game that they can play. But otherwise, what we're doing is introducing the sounds with a tile. And at first they have tiles, they're sitting on the mat in the whole group, and they're doing it with the tiles. Hopefully there's an assistant or another adult who can walk around and help the children arrange the tiles. And we're also using it with small groups. And we'll start with like a page with 3 columns on it and say, let's make some words. Let's make cat and fat and sat and hat. And they do that either with the tiles that are placed in front of them, or they write the letters. So you can do it with whole group or small group, and there are apps that you can use as well.
Okay. Can you explain how this type of instruction differs from phonics approaches that focus on teaching through word families?
Well, phonics, let's talk about phoneme awareness first. Phoneme awareness is often taught orally by having kids say words and then delete a sound or add a sound or whatever. I think phoneme awareness is more effectively taught in the way that I've described, where they're actually sounding out a word and spelling it, because they see the link between the sound and the letter. Why am I learning to move these sounds around in a word? Why does my brain want to know about that? So a lot of the exercises that we have considered as precursors to phoneme awareness, like rhyming or syllables or breaking words into like male, man, and so on, they can be fun. They can be things you can do in the car, but they shouldn't take up a lot of classroom time, because this is a faster way to do it. As far as phonics, what was the question about phonics?
How is it different from word families?
Well, I am using word families, but not as reading, not as trying to read them. I'm using them as a way to introduce a new letter at the beginning of a rhyme at the onset, in order to teach that letter and that sound.
Whereas they're teaching it print first.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the difference.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's a question. Does the Gillis study report, NICHD report, hold true with bilingual students?
Okay, I haven't done it with bilingual students, but I have worked in the past with Spanish-speaking students in Oakland, California. And we were working with second graders, and we were using a program that I developed with NICHD. And those children surprised me in one way. When you're teaching a child that reading is all about, literacy is all about learning how to use the alphabet and segmenting words. The words in Spanish are more transparent. That's a word that they use about transparent and opaque languages. English is a more opaque language because it's got so many exceptions and different. It's comprised of. It was developed from so many different languages that it's much more complicated than Spanish is. And so what happened at the end of that study was that the Spanish-speaking kids learned how to read Spanish. We were trying to teach them to read and write in English. They improved equally well in both languages because they were just learning to sound out a word, whether it was in Spanish or in English, figure out what their mouth was saying to make that word, to produce that word, and then link a letter with it. So there are some slight differences between the Spanish and English in terms of what letters stand for what sounds. But in whole, the idea that they can segment a word and represent it with letters, represent the speech sounds with letters, is the same in both languages. So although I haven't done it with 4-year-olds, in another language, I would predict that it would work.
Okay, are we ready? Ah,
Okay. No more questions?
This is the Torgerson report.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a study that I did with Joe Torgerson, and we were looking at Pat Lindemuth's work. She has a program called LIPS, and a program that I developed called Read, Write, and Type. This is a software program where kids are learning to touch type at the same time they're learning to segment words and write them on the computer. So anyway, this is the result. They were significantly stronger than controls in phoneme awareness, rapid naming, decoding, word reading accuracy, fluency, spelling, and reading comprehension at the end of first grade. And these were at-risk kids. They were in the lowest 20% of the class on those original tests. And the better performance continued until the end of second grade. And that's one area that we really need more research in. We try these things with kids at a certain age, and then we say, oh, there was improvement. And then we haven't really looked at what a systematic curriculum, a speech to print curriculum would produce with the kids over a whole group of years, like pre-K all the way to grade 2. And that would be really helpful, because you really want to see whether these skills remain. They have to be able to read and write when they get to third grade. Okay.
It would be great to have a study done on that, wouldn't it?
It would. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Are you going to
No.
go home and try it? Oh, this is a really sad slide. But these are the data that the national reading scores produce. That only 46% of white kids are proficient or above. Actually, what it turns out is that 2/3 of our kids, all across all races in America, are not reading at a proficient level. They're not
Right.
reading at grade level. And this is the way it works out with different races. I just show this to give us a little shock and to emphasize how important it is for us to get this right at the beginning. If we can give them a good start with encoding and decoding, then the rocket science of reading with the more complicated spellings and how to compose essays and how to read other people's books is going to come from their experience in the classroom. But if they can't decode a word, they're going to be stuck all the way through. So they really need this foundational work to get them started right. Okay, I think that's it.
That's it. Okay, we have one
Okay.
more question.
Yeah, let's take that off. I don't like to look at it.
Is it okay if I
Okay.
add that slide to the YouTube video, the slide deck? Are you okay sharing
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right.
And I can send you the video of the little boy, the little 4-year-old, if you want.
Oh, good. All right, here
Yeah.
was the last question. Would you suggest, what would Jeannine suggest for how we can get some of the speech to print research off the ground without the complexities of grants and large scale RCTs? Grad student thesis?
Oh, well, Yeah, I've written a lot of huge grants in my life. For those 5 big grants that I got from NICHD, you have to figure out that you had to write about 3 times as many in order to get the grant. You get turned down a lot, and it's very difficult to get the research to happen. I think what has to happen is what's happening right now, and that is that the public is going to demand that we figure this out. And that will get the government going to fund more research. I don't see another way to do it, but what I'm trying to do with this group of people is to start from the bottom up and start with parents and caregivers and aunts and uncles and grandparents and say, look, we can start with this on our own. We can do this with alphabet child and some digital instruction that provides a systematic curriculum for moving through the different in adding to the repertoire that the child has in a systematic way. So that's what I want to see happen, and I think that wouldn't be as expensive. And if we could just get people actually doing it, then we wouldn't need this formal research. We could just show people videos and say, look, they're reading, it works. Okay.
I had a conversation today with a woman who was guiding me on some certain projects, and she has a 3-year-old, 3 years, 7 months little boy, and one of her clients has a software product called Capit. I don't know what it stands for, but it's a speech to print app, and he's been using it. So she says she's at the grocery store this past weekend, and he's 3, and he reads, I don't know, 2 words, and she looks at him and she goes, what does that say? And he reads it. What does that say? And he reads it. She was blown away. She didn't even know he could read.
Yeah.
And it's all because he learned a speech to print approach. I mean, he kept hearing it. He heard the sounds, he made the sounds, and then matched it with letters in this app that he's using. So
but
it's exciting.
We could say it is. We could say a word about dialect. Different people pronounce words differently, and there's always the question, are you going to correct a child if he says ax instead of ask? And if they're going to learn to read and write in English, they have to learn a school way to say that word. And it doesn't have to be presented in a way that's derogatory or offending. You just say, everybody has different ways of pronouncing things. I think Nora was talking about the word loyal the other day, and was just calling that the letter L at the end instead of the AL. And I think if you pronounce it, if you're thinking about the way your mouth is making those sounds, you have to say loyal. You can't say loyal. There has to be a schwa sound in there, loyal. And that will show you that there has to be another letter in there. Anyway, you have to be sensitive to the way people pronounce words and try to help them pronounce a word in a way that they're going to be able to read and write it in English.
Here's another question. What do you do with the students who have poor oral language skills or speech issues and can't say the sounds correctly?
Well, that's a problem. Yeah, you need a speech pathologist.
Right.
Work with the child yourself and do
and modeling, right? You can model
face-to-face stuff. Yes, with your mouth. Show them what you are doing with your mouth.
Right. Yeah. Here's one. Would you modify any of these recommendations for children with severe speech sounds issues like Down syndrome?
Well, yeah, it's just gonna take more time and more patience.
Mhm.
But as I said, the best way is to just get them to say words with you. And look in a mirror themselves or look at you and say the words as clearly as you can and as clearly as they can. It's hard. It's hard to work with children who have speech problems. I'm not a speech pathologist, so I don't know as much about it as those guys do. If you wanna ask somebody a question, ask Jan Wazowitz, because she is a speech pathologist and she's worked very, very extensively with kids who have speech problems.
Okay,
You,
anyone
you could
else?
you could post her information, Donna, if people
Okay.
want. If yeah, okay.
She-
Anybody else?
Anyone else?
You
Yeah,
all have very
Donna.
interesting faces. I want to get to meet all of you.
I actually did have another question that I sent you. I don't know if you got it or it got buried.
How do we address the fact that traditional phonics train has already left the station? Let me read it again. How do we address the fact that the traditional phonics train has already left the station as science of reading? How do we get the larger public to understand that there might be a third way that is more efficient?
Well, it's a good question because I've been struggling with it for many years. And I
Sure.
think I get a school interested in the whole speech to print approach, and suddenly the principal is gone or the teacher has gone somewhere else or whatever, and it all falls apart. I think we just need to keep talking about it and publishing research, and that's what I'm trying to do. But if each person tries this on their own with their kid and discovers that it's helpful, that's going to be a big jump. I think it's going to spread.
I think social media can be highly effective for transmitting that message. And we're trying, as we all know. Phonics is not, it's not bad. It's good, but it's not the most efficient.
Well, you can't throw out phonics. I mean, we're talking about
Exactly.
phonics and we're doing phonics. There are just different ways to teach phonics.
Right. Right.
So don't throw out phonics, but because phonics is really the ability to link a sound, speech sound with a letter.
Yeah.
And
Actually, a print to speech approach is more than they've gotten with phonics than whole language. So we've made a shift in the right direction, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
but I know it's very hard for schools to change. They're trying to add phonics, and what happens is they drop in a little phonics with what was originally balanced literacy or Fountas and Pinnell. I think, and I just talked to Margie yesterday, and in New York, I think they're trying to add F&P with foundations, and they're just going to discover it's not going to work as well. They're
right. All right, I think we have no more questions unless someone wants to unmute themselves and shout out something. Or
I would just like to say thank you. Thank you. I feel honored to be on a Zoom with you guys and everybody. And I really do. I feel this is just fantastic. And I see Nora and Marnie here also. It just is huge for me.
Well, Liza, you're like my prize student. I just love you. She's been with me since the beginning.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I was going to send you a text, a message after this on and say, you really, if it what you have changed so much in my life, in my career, in my tutoring business. I'm at this point, I have about 8 kindergarten kids, eight first graders. I just,
Wow.
and it's all because of you.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank
I
you.
mean, when I leave,
Great.
yeah, my newest kindergarten boy could not orally segment or blend any words within, I'm not kidding, 4th session was yesterday. And he's
Uh-huh.
reading CVC words, sounding them out, but it's just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable.
It's so exciting, even as a practitioner, right? To have that knowledge is so invaluable. I mean, I wish
Yeah.
I had this
Well,
5 years ago,
Yeah.
10 years ago.
the real secret of it is being able to segment a word. The
Yeah,
phoneme
true.
awareness is at the bottom of everything. Everything else is built on that.
That is so true.
Yeah, when I first met him, I was like, oh, something is really closed in there. There's something missing. And week by week, it's like it's opening. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
So exciting.
It really is.
That's great.
Thank
That's
you,
great.
friend.
So-
Anybody else?
okay.
All right. This has been
Well,
great.
great.
I loved our first
Great
session.
to see you all.
We're going to continue this on a monthly basis. It'll probably take 1.5 years to do this because there's so many articles in that magazine, but that's okay. We'll just spread it out and we'll see what happens 1.5 years from now. All right.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Jeannine.
that's true.
I just love listening
Okay.
to
You're
you.
very welcome.
All right.
Okay,
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Donna, I have